Welcome to day 19 of 31 days, 31 Proverbs, 19 episodes, 19 chapters in. It's honestly crazy how much scripture we've been able to cover in these past couple weeks. There have been a lot of verses, a lot of pondering, a lot of answers, and a lot of questions. And so I just want to start off with a quick thank you for being on this journey with me, this journey to wisdom, this journey to intimacy with God. And I want to start off today's episode with a quote. It goes like this: I have the answers to the test, but I got to see the questions first. This quote was from Mr. Shea Gilgis Alexander. If you don't know who he is, if you watch basketball like me, you know that Um, Mr. Shea Gildas Alexander himself said this right after hitting a game winning three pointer to defeat the Denver Nuggets in just a regular season game. He hit a game winner. And in his post game interview, he said this exact quote: I have the answers to this test, but I got to see the questions first. And aside from the soundbite turned to Instagram quote, he's speaking facts. Real talk, he's speaking facts. He's probably practiced that step back three hundreds, if not thousands of times. He's probably practiced different scenarios in which instead of a step back three, he drives the ball in for 2 points, or he passes to his teammate, or he takes a mid range. He has the answers to the test, but he has to see the questions first. As league MVP and NBA champion, he's probably prepared for every possible coverage or defense scheme against him. But preparation only matters when it's properly applied in the context of the situation. Knowing all the answers is not the same as giving the right answers. And Proverbs 19 has a similar sentiment as we open today. In verse 2, it says, Desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way. This describes someone who's impulsive and acts hastily before thinking or planning their way. Zeal, energy, or desire without careful analysis and knowledge chooses the wrong path. We want feeling and we want results. We want answers and actions before we understand the questions. So let's lean into wisdom today and ask good questions. Let's ponder. Let's open our heart to wisdom. Let's listen and understand before we answer. Verse 8: Whoever gets sense loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will discover good. Verse 20: Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. Amen. We'll break up our episode today into three sections. We'll start off with verse 3 actually. When a man's folly brings his way to ruin, his heart rages against the Lord. This first section will be on poverty. There's a kind of poverty we'll label as unrighteous poverty, a poverty that is a result of foolishness. If we look back into verse 3, it said, A man's folly brings his way to ruin. One way the foolish can bring poverty upon themselves is by being lazy. Verse 24 says, The sluggard buries his hand in the dish and will not even bring it back to his mouth. The illustration here is that the fool is so lazy that he wouldn't even feed himself. Laziness is irrational and leads to poverty and hunger. Verse 15, slothfulness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. Laziness is progressive. Being lazy doesn't just stop you from working hard, but it gradually makes it harder for you to ever start working. Laziness brings a progressive decline in one's ability to work hard. For example, it's just like a person who's out of touch with, physical conditioning. The lazy find themselves less able to endure sustained, longer periods of mental or physical exertion or labor. It's like running. If you've ever, done a marathon, you'll know that you can't run one off the couch. On the contrary, there's another gradual process, and opposite of the progress of laziness, there's the progress of sanctification. And that process is supernatural and can overcome this natural decline of sin. Two things to note about sanctification, real quick. One, it's never complete in this life. Philippians 3:12 says, "Not that I have already attained this or am already perfect, but I press on to make it my own because Jesus Christ has made me his own." That's the first thing. Sanctification may never be complete in this life. But the second thing is it entails gradual conformity, step by step, to the likeness of Christ. Ephesians 4:23-24 says, "And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness." The foolish can be unwise in their poverty through laziness and their own pride or foolishness. But check this out, the foolish can also be unwise in their wealth. Verse 4, wealth brings many new friends, but a poor man is deserted by his friend. It's not saying that having wealth is inherently bad, but it makes it extremely hard to distinguish true friends from false friends. Suffering reveals true friends from false friends. Verse 6-7. Many seek the favor of a generous man, and everyone is a friend to a man who gives gifts. All a poor man's brothers hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? When I read these verses, I feel a sense of less relationship and more transaction. These verses have this dialogue in them that's saying, what can I get out of this person? This is not friendship. Wise friends don't use one another. The wise understand the power money has to create deceptive friendships. The fools only see money as an opportunity to get more quantity, but less quality friendships. That's what money can do. More quantity, but less quality. We as Christians, however, have access to the highest form of friendship there is, which is common faith, shared love for Jesus. These couple of verses also point out that those who turn their backs on the poor are in sin. Verse 10, "It is not fitting for a fool to live in luxury, much less for a slave to rule over princes." When it says that it's much less for a slave to rule over princes, it doesn't mean that it's always wrong for a slave to rise to power. We saw Joseph ascend to, a high-ranking Egyptian government positions, right? When he was literally a prisoner, sold by his brothers. But it suggests that fortune and misfortune are not always fair. Sometimes a fool becomes wealthy without doing anything, and sometimes a slave rises to power without the ability to rule well. It is unrighteous wealth when those who have it do not have the character, wisdom, or maturity to steward it. This is describing unrighteous wealth. Proverbs 19 also references a righteous poverty. Verse 1, better is a poor person who walks in his integrity than one who is crooked in speech and is a fool. Verse 22, what is desired in a man is steadfast love, and a poor man is better than a liar. There is integrity in this poor person's character. While there is poverty caused by foolishness, Proverbs insists that poverty is not always shameful. There could be those in a poor population who have strong moral character. And God is concerned with all character on all sides of economic standing, wherever you land. Verse 17, whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deeds. They lend to the Lord. Who's the recipient of generosity? God is. There's a way to be righteous in our wealth by being generous stewards of it. This is a righteous wealth. And as we end this point on poverty, unrighteous poverty, righteous poverty, unrighteous wealth, righteous wealth, it is key to understand that Jesus himself became poor, taking our punishment so that we could get the eternal spiritual riches. We'll never embrace the poor with love or respect for them until we see that we were spiritually poor and we live only by God's grace. That is the driving force of our generosity towards all people of economic standing. We're going to transition to our next section. Having great economic power, standing, or status comes with great responsibility. Like Spider-Man said, verse 12, a king's wrath is like the growling of a lion, but his favor is like dew on the grass. Verse 28, a worthless witness mocks at justice, and the mouth of the wicked devours iniquity. Our next section is going to be about our speech. What we say is important. Proverbs talks about the way we talk through and through. Verse 5 and 9 are nearly identical. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who breathes out lies will not escape. Verse 9, a false witness will not go unpunished, and he who breathes out lies will perish. This talks about lies, and there can be many types of lies in our speech. There are polite lies, ones that say, I would love to go, but I have plans, very politely. There are euphemisms or half-truths. They're not completely straightforward, but, half-truths are still full lies. There are exaggerations that count as lies as well. You always blank. You never blank. There are what we call benevolent lies. There are lies that are centered around avoiding confrontation. And so it's always trying to keep things positive instead of being real. God takes lying very seriously. Every lie uses rather than loves a person. By keeping the truth from them, you put them in this dependent posture and you exploit them. There's no such thing as a harmless lie, and God's Spirit will never work through dishonest words. Jesus, however, told the truth, even if it got him tortured and killed. What we initially say matters, but also what we say reactively. Verse 11, good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. This talks about the offended. It talks to the offended. This is someone who always feels the need to protest and complain rather than overlooking a slight or a wrong. How you react to an insult reveals something about your spirit. Verse 19, a man of great wealth will pay the penalty, for if you deliver him, you will only have to do it again. Those who can't control their anger or themselves find themselves in this cycle of trouble. It says in that verse, wrath will pay the penalty. Their loss of temper always entails just the natural consequences that they just can't escape. They are their own worst enemies, those who are out of self-control. On the contrary, Jesus was meek. He did not tell the powerful people what they wanted to hear. He spoke truth to the people in power with respect, without compromise. And in this last section, This third section of the day that we will cover in today's Proverbs will be about parenting. So, the first thing we talked about is money, wealth, poverty. Second thing was speech, and now parenting. Verse 26 to 27. He who does violence to his father and chases away his mother is a son who brings shame and reproach. Cease to hear instructions, my son, and you will go stray from the words of knowledge. Verse 18. Discipline your son, for there is hope. Do not set your heart on putting him to death. Boundaries and consequences are important for teaching children. If parents do not, bring carefully controlled, unpleasant consequences into their children's lives, their children will eventually grow up and go into a world and experiencing something far more painful. Have you experienced the consequences of your actions growing up? Were you punished or disciplined growing up in whatever way that looks like? If not, you won't be ready to face the inevitable consequences of life because you never experienced that as a child. This chapter points out that good parenting also takes this dual effort from both the father and the mother. Verse 13. A foolish son is ruin to his father, and a wife's quarreling is continual dripping of rain. The dripping of rain was not only useless but harmful. It describes like a leak in the house just dripping. And think of water eroding a stone over time. And what that represents physically or not metaphorically is this nagging in the household. Nagging is the slow, constant dripping that can wear out the love of a relationship. In a relationship, don't drip criticisms in, these painful little jabs. Instead of dripping, pour. Take time and critique each other with love and encouragement. That is a remedy here. Verse 14. House and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. This describes wise men and wise women. Prudent people make prudent marriages. And so to round out this point, as we have with all of our points so far, God's parenting is perfect, and He disciplines us for our good. He knows we hate the consequences we bring into our lives now, but later they will bear enormous fruit. Hebrews 12:11. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Verse 21 in our Proverbs. Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. This is a great comfort that no matter what others may try to do, God's purposes for you will stand. Discipline is best experienced when we are molded and taught by it. There needs to be the presence of openness and teachability. Verse 29, condemnation is ready for scoffers and beating for the backs of fools. Verse 25, strike a scoffer, and the simple will learn prudence. Reprove a man of understanding, and he will gain knowledge. This verse gives hope that the simple can change and they can learn sense. Verse 16, whoever keeps the commandments keeps his life. He who despises his ways will die. Verse 23, the fear of the Lord leads to life, and whoever has it rests satisfied. He will not be visited by harm. Those who fear God find God satisfying. Trouble can take away anything from you except God. If God is to you your greater safety, your deeper security, and more powerful hope, than anything else in this world, you fear no trouble. Depending on God in trouble is this spiritual skill that can only be learned in trouble, in experiencing that. And so we've gone over many answers today. Many answers about poverty, speech, parenting. We got answers to the test. So now let's look at some questions. How has your financial situation informed your characteristics lately? Or vice versa, how has your character informed your financial situation? Next question, what has your attitude been lately? What is the default dialogue like? What do you say and how do you say it? Next question, think of a time when God was trying to show you something through pain. What did you think God was trying to show you? How did you react at the time? As you think about these reflection questions, I want you to rewind back, press the minus or backwards 10 seconds button and go through these questions again with this central question in mind. If you asked Jesus these questions, what would his answers be? May his answers inspire us to worship him and live like him. That is day 19, guys. See you tomorrow. I love you.